Born Primitive Outdoor is proud to partner with Montana Knife Company, Marsupial Gear, Evolution Outdoors, Sheep Feet, and Capture Gear. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have the super cool, the great PJ Reilly. We've never done a podcast before. Talked a few times, but I appreciate you hopping on the podcast. It sounds like you're pretty busy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a good year so far. I must have done something right because, I'm having fun.
Heck yeah. So, I think most people that would, as far as my circle of friends, would know you from Competition Archery Media, the Lancaster Archery. I guess you write for Lancaster Archery, but for me, not shooting tournament archery like I used to, I watch it on YouTube, which means I see you on there. You do kind of interviews or whatever, but explain to everyone what you're about, like the normal deal you do on every podcast, and then let's dive into a little bit more after that.
Sure. Yeah. So, it's kind of a litany of things that just kind of evolve over time. I work for Lancaster Archery full time. I came in to start a blog for them. So I was doing their blog in the beginning, and then it kind of morphed into where we had a YouTube channel, but that was strictly to broadcast our Lancaster Archery Classic tournament that we have every winter. And Rob Caulfield, the owner, he was kind of like, hey, why don't we start doing product videos? So we started doing those, and, blogs, I don't know, does anybody read anymore? It doesn't feel like they do.
Not much.
So it kind of transitioned into more doing video for our YouTube channel. And then along the way, the ASA asked us, Archery Shooters Association, a 3D, one of the big 3D organizations. They came to us and kind of said, hey, we want you to do for us what you do for the Classic, Lancaster Archery Classic. So Rob set me and a video producer and was like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. So then we started Competition Archery Media and started, broadcasting archery tournaments. We're live on the Sportsman's Channel with all 6 of the ASAs every year. So, we do tournament style there. So that's kind of anything in there, products for Lancaster Archery, competitions for Competition Archery Media, and then, we have a CAM podcast. So kind of mixed bag.
So, and just for anybody that doesn't know, PJ's definitely in the been around the block category. Seen it all. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're close to the same age. You might be a little bit older than me, but been doing this for a very long time. And then with Lancaster Archery, for anybody that's listening in that doesn't know who they are, I would say by a substantial amount are the largest internet archery dealer that I know of. You guys pretty much own the market on that and have an amazing amount of gear to a confusing level on certain things, and because you guys have to carry so much. Like when I was looking at recurve limbs, for example, different risers ends up being the different limbs or different poundage, and then me being a businessman, whatever, running businesses, I'm going through all these SKUs thinking I feel horrible for whoever has to deal with all, and then you have to make videos for all the different products or most of them.
I'm sitting about 15 yards from 87,000 archery only SKUs.
Yeah, there you go. So with like you've got your hands in a little bit of everything. Which one do you enjoy the most? And is there a job you had in your past? Like, obviously I only know you from archery. Did you have don't want to say a real job, but a job you didn't want to go to. And when did that stop? Like a little bit more about that.
So I was a news reporter for 25 years. For different newspapers here in Southeast Pennsylvania. The last 20 years, I was at the Lancaster paper, which is mainly how I got to know Rob and Lancaster Archery. But also during that time, I wrote for magazines. I have written for pretty much all the magazines out there. Most of the ones, a lot of them don't exist anymore, but probably 10, 15 years, I was Bowhunter, Peterson's Bowhunting, North American Whitetail, Peterson's Hunting, Sports Afield, Outdoor Life, blah, 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 on and on and on. I wrote for all those magazines as well while I was in the newspaper game. And to be perfectly honest, if newspapers still could, pay a decent living, I'd probably still be there. My kind of, I don't know if it's my specialty or the one thing I always got called out to do at the newspaper was when somebody died, murder, car accident, farm accident around here. I always tell people that I probably have investigated, I don't mean from the police sense, but investigated from the news sense, probably somewhere between 250 to 300 murders in my time.
Holy cow. I didn't know any of this. That's crazy.
I know. That's why I always tell people that. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if you drive around the county here, the guys always laugh. They drive around the county with me, and I'm sitting there like, okay, right there, this guy killed his wife with an axe and then, hit her in the basement. Over there, yeah, there were 2 people murdered in that house. And it's kind of a grisly tour of Lancaster County, who was killed where.
That's wild. So that was 20 years ago that you stopped.
That was 25 years, okay. And then I stopped that in 2015. I've been here ever since.
Gotcha. So obviously that explains a lot of the, charisma on camera, because some people fold up on camera like a cheap suit, right? Like not everybody's meant to talk on the camera. I mean, I've had to get guys to take a couple shots where I'm like, dude, you got to calm down. Like this is not, so obviously you're very articulate, when you're on, makes a lot of sense. So were you, I guess, big into bow hunting during this transition, and was it easy because of that or difficult because you hadn't been?
Yeah, I've known Rob, owner of Lancaster Archery, since 1990. That's when I started bow hunting. I came to Lancaster Archery. It was local to me. I lived in the area, started shooting his leagues and all that, and he just helped me all through. He was always like, hey, if there's ever any equipment questions or whatever you have, come on in and ask me. So I've known him for 35 years, I guess it is now. And always came in here. And then it was about 2011 or 12. I just saw him in passing, and he said, hey, when I get my website up and running, he's like, I'm going to have an information section. You're going to come work for me. And so I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he called me one day, a year or two later, and he was like, hey, my website's ready to go. Come on in. Let's do this. And that was it timed perfectly when newspapers were taking a nosedive. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, and that is one thing I was going to... we're probably going to be all over the map on this podcast. It's always nice having someone on the podcast that's been around the block, because there's some things that people just don't maybe take for granted that we have in technology now, or back in the day with painting brass pins with tritium paint. I mean, a lot has changed over
there.
Yeah, a lot has changed over the years. What I would say, one of the things I wanted to bring up is when we talked about print, and I would say print is, and people get super sensitive about this, like print is dying. And, but it is. And when I say that, there's going to be, I'm sure, publications that will last the test of time. But because of the way the world works, for everything, like right now, if I went back to, like you said, 1990, about the same time I got into archery, pretty heavy, give or take. If I wanted to learn to backpack hunt or level my bow or whatever, it was something that you had to go to a pro shop, read articles, save all your magazines, you, Chuck Adams, Ulmer, you had all these people writing. Now you can be, as you shouldn't be, driving down the road, pop up 75 podcasts, tutorial videos. People don't read anymore. What are your thoughts on that? Like, did you see it coming? Like that.
We had none of that. It's amazing to me how the information is available, and it's a good and a bad thing. What else? And this may get me in trouble from my side and my perspective, but like when I wrote something, okay, I know the media is a big thing right now. If I wrote something, I had to be able to prove that. Either somebody official said that to me, or I had physical evidence to say this exists. And so everything was backed up that I would have put into print. Now, kind of anybody can go on there and say anything. I saw a video not too long ago on how to hold a bow from a young lady. She was doing her video, and she was just kind of like, a lot of people will tell you should hold a bow a certain way. It doesn't really matter. Just hold it however you feel comfortable. But I wonder what George Riles would have to say about that.
It's funny. That one got sent to me actually a few times. I try to be, and you're the same way. I try now when I'm my younger days, full of piss and get vinegar, different story, but I just try to stay above the fray, and I'll laugh at them, but I try not to get too involved. I don't ever want to, want to bash anyone, but there is some horrible info out there. And what you said is not only, like you said, you had to prove it, or you've had to have done it, and when I say that, not everyone is going to have a great schedule. Like, I'm very blessed. I get to go out in the woods a ton. The thing is when you've learned by doing, so, whatever, wisdom and knowledge, right? You can know it, but wisdom, you've done it. The wisdom is above and beyond even the initial question or task, meaning you could be talking about something, a bow grip, right? And, how you grip your bow and the pros and cons, or different wrist slings and the negatives and positives, or finger slings, and go into great detail because of all the knowledge that you have and all of the friends that you have and professional archers and what you've seen, and give a very good detailed response or tutorial video. That could not be printed without being vetted back in the day. Like, and I say within reason, you had to have a high amount of knowledge, or nobody would pick up your article. Like, you just didn't get to write because nobody cared. Now, you have a pulse, you have an opinion, you may have a YouTube page, and you may also have a podcast, and you may not know shit. That happens every day.
Yes, it does. It certainly does.
With that, like, did you see it coming? How much has that affected, in a good or a bad way? This is obviously your opinion, the laziness maybe of not having to kind of hack it and figure it out on your own because of the easy button. And then just my own curiosity, how much has that changed, would you say, like Lancaster sales? How quick did they have to, did they stay up on the marketing? Did they stay up on everything they needed to? Or did they get caught up in there at any point? I'm always curious about this stuff. I think that, it is. I think it's good and bad that it is readily available. What I can tell you from the pro shop side is the bad is when people, go on to YouTube and look at these things, whether it's right or not. We have all the bows now where you can do a lot of tuning yourself.
that's good and bad. We see a lot of bows that come in from somebody who tried to do it themselves and screwed it up even worse than it was before. So, and I'm probably actually a perfect example, because I wouldn't say that I'm mechanically inclined. What you mentioned about experience, that's how I learned. I can't look at something and know how to do it. I have to do it. And I have to do it many times before I get it right. So I think sometimes the YouTube, if used the wrong way, if you're looking for a quick way to fix something, you can get yourself into some trouble, I think. Especially, if you're like me and not mechanically inclined. And did I see any of this coming? No. I'll be honest and say no. When I was in newspapers, I was like, the place where I worked, it's interesting, here in Lancaster County, we're probably a little bit protected in a bubble because of the Amish. Mm-hmm. Every Amish person that I know reads the newspaper. So with a substantial population here of at least 60,000 or so, that's kind of a built-in readership that you're always going to have. The Amish buy the newspaper. So we were kind of insulated here more than other places because of that. But to see what has happened to it, no, I would have never thought that was going to crash like that. And all the magazines and everything just... that caught me by surprise.
Because it was kind of a badge of honor. This is my own opinion, but a badge of honor back in the day to be in Bowhunter or Peterson's or Eastman's of like, I did it. I accomplished my goal, and I wrote a article or gear review. You submit one of those, and it was one 100%. Of those. And then you knew the players in the game, meaning you knew whose articles you wanted to read and who had been vetted or had experience.
Right. And
that's changed. The marketing side has changed at a level that is unbelievable, good or bad. And when I say that, there's a lot of and I'm going to be totally honest, I hide in my bubble in Wyoming, and I have a range at my house, and I don't try to make my life more difficult than it already is by following along things that piss me off. A lot of people wake up for whatever reason, and their goal is to talk shit about someone or find something on the internet that they feel is unjust, and then which I think is toxic. It's probably not a good idea, but it doesn't take long to find that if you want. And as an example, you look at some of the things that are going. When I say something, sight leveling a bow, right? Like, how do you level a bow, for example? Yeah, you can Google. I mean, I can tell you right now, call Tim Gillingham. He'll tell you all you want to know and how stupid you are and how smart he is. That's Tim, right? But Tim is a genius at that. But Tim is not as well known to me as he should be on knowledge in the hunting world, the target world he is, right? Right. But trying to find that, like you said, how do you level the bow? What if you can't fit a Hamsky or whatever type of sight level on the sight? Where do you put it? And Lancaster does a very good job, though, of, tech videos. But during all of this, what were, like, when you were doing these videos, did you look at anyone else's, or did you say, piss on it, I'm going to do my own thing, I don't care how anybody else does this, when you started to kind of roll out the YouTube stuff?
Yeah, well, when we started, honestly, there wasn't much out there on YouTube. When we started doing it, bow launch videos now, that's a big thing. There was none. There were no bow launch videos other than by, Matthews put out their Sizzler reel about the new bow, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as somebody standing in front of you telling you about the specs and the features, there weren't any. So we kind of just started doing them, and quite frankly, in the beginning, I think looking back now, they sucked. But I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of put it out there. I would joke about it. I used to put a whisker biscuit on it and shoot it out on the range at 20 yards with no sight, a compound bow.
Yeah.
And, that's just what we did. And then after a while, I was like, that's kind of weird. Who's going to shoot it like that?
Yeah.
So, it kind of, as all things, as you're learning, you just kind of progress and you figure out, okay, this is how we should be doing that. So they just kind of advanced over time. But I would say there really wasn't a model for us to look at. When it came to product videos, then, there were some things like Tim Gillingham. He had some old gold tip stuff where he explained things. Of course, it took him 30 minutes to explain something that you needed to do in 5.
Yeah, it takes Tim 2 hours to watch 60 minutes. He's very thorough, that's for sure.
I always said, I went to Tim once, we had to film something for Bowhunter TV, and I said, all right, Tim, we have 2 minutes to do this. If you had to pick hunting arrows, how are you picking them? He talked for 11 minutes without stopping, and I was like, Tim, I can't use any of that. I got 2 minutes. You can't do that in 10 minutes.
Funny.
But as far as presenting information, he may go over the top, but he was always one that I looked to because he knows so much.
Yeah, he is. And I like to mess with Tim a lot, which he in turn messes with me. But Tim's also a guy, when I can't figure something out, probably going to call Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
100%.
And he's probably figured out in 14 different ways. You just need to be paying very good attention once it gets rolling, because there's going to be a, waterfall of info coming, your way. But
for sure,
as like, I'm trying not to bounce. I should have written a few things down. One of the things I was going to ask you before we get too far into this is totally off subject, but my own personal opinion. I really wish that there was a law that we could set to where bow companies could not come out with new bows every year. This is way out of left field. I cannot imagine the epic pain in the ass it is for the bow companies and the engineering side of it, the marketing side. And that and the bows, and again, this is not PJ, this is me. The technology doesn't change that much from one year to the next. Every now and then you do have, a decent enough change, but I would really like for at least every 2 years, bow companies can't come out with new bows, because it's every year, right? Everybody, Aaron, you going to do a bow review? And I'm like, they're all good. Go shoot them. Like, there's not a bad bow out there. Like, I hate even giving advice other than saying something to the effect of, this bow's faster if you have a shorter draw. This might be better for it, but it's really personal preference. Just because you have to deal with the however many different bow reviews you have to do, I know that's never going to happen. But what are your thoughts on the new bows and how much it's changed from back in the day? They all kind of released at one time, where now it's like mid 2025 and I'm getting what are your thoughts on all that?
So a couple things. First off, Rob Koppel always said, basically in the bow cycle, like about 5 years, now you're seeing, if you bought one and then wait 5 years, okay, now you're going to see some noticeable improvements if you wait that long. But they used to release all the bows. I remember used to be released all in January, and then some started bleeding to December. Okay, well, we want to beat them, so we're going to come out in November. Well, and so we did our first video, I think it was the Bowtech Ascend, was that late August we've already done, and Bear already came out with theirs a couple weeks ago, September. So and now we've got a bunch coming out in October, we got some coming out in November, December. So it's and then, for us, if you throw in Target stuff, it's almost a year-round thing, almost. Probably February and March and April they stay away from, I'll say. But I don't know that you see huge gains from year to year, especially if you stick with one brand. I think you'll see maybe this one comes out, PSE comes out with something real cool this year. Maybe the next year, Matthews now has something cool. Hoyt after. It kind of, that's how I see it. It doesn't seem to be that someone is coming out with something crazy new every year. So, well, they don't.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I was just say that's because they can't. And the thing that I'm not complaining because I shoot for different bow companies and get bows to test or whatever, but it is like the bow that I have, I got the day before, maybe two, that I was going elk hunting, and I ended up shooting my elk with a rifle in October because I got my butt kicked. But so I'm up all night and all morning dialing the bow in to take on the elk hunt. But then, and I can't go into I'm just laughing at this. They're like, you can't have the bow in the photos at all. You can't even blur it out. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, everybody's gonna think I shot it with a rifle, which I ended up shooting my elk with a rifle anyway. But because the dealers get mad, and you're friends with Darren Christianberry, I really pissed off elite. No, I wouldn't say pissed. I never in a million years thought somebody would figure out what bow I was shooting when I shot a goat, and a mountain goat, and it was the Ethos, I think. And
gotcha.
I posted photos of this goat, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to post them, and it was too early. And then the dealers are yelling at Darren because I'm posting a bow while they have old inventory on their shelves that no one's now going to buy, because even though everyone knows a new bow's coming, new bows, mini bows for me, but the marketing side of it is an absolute nightmare as well.
It's definitely rough. I think one of the things that helps them, bow companies, which I don't know that they mention too much, is that a lot of times, a new bow launches in November, but you can't really get it until March or so. Some years it's even April. And so I think people who say, I want to wait, but I need a bow for this year, then, they have to make a choice. Okay, do I buy this year's? But I do think it's weird that right now people are hunting with bows, and I'm getting in ones that we're preparing to launch the new ones. And they're just using the ones that we launched last year for hunting.
Yep. Yeah.
That is kind of strange.
Yeah, that's
I'm sure
that's
Levi's been shooting giant deer. I'm sure he's shooting that with the new Matthews. If I were a betting man, I haven't seen a bow in a picture, which tells me he's killing that with the new stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's the nature of the beast, but it does get, it's very confusing and I say convoluted, but definitely and difficult for everyone. And again, we're very blessed to have all of these things. So I don't want to sound like a whiner, but you having to deal with it even more than me, you'll be doing bow reviews until your tongue falls out, and sight reviews and new arrows and components and broadheads and because people are starving to see what's new. It's generally not going to help them be a better hunter. And it's probably going to cause divorces because they're going to buy things they shouldn't be and things like that. I'm saying that as a joke, but right now, though, for video wise, from here to the ATA, is that your most hectic time from here to ATA to get everything out?
Yes, and it's hunting season. Yeah. I want to be out there hunting. I got to be in here. I mean, I guess it's a good and a bad thing. PA, we can only shoot one buck, so I shot mine, so I'm kind of free-ish. I'd still like to go to some other states and stuff, but now it's we need you in here launching this week. Yeah. It's for us, it's man, this is bad timing.
Yeah. So you're talking about the bows, for example. You're using them all. If you were going to pick, I don't want to pin you down too much, but over the last 5 to 10 years, if you were going to pick 3 bows, any of the brands, and you could have all 3 from one company, what would you pick for hunting?
I was just thinking about this sitting in my tree Saturday. You must have read my mind. I don't know why. The thought just popped into my head. And I can tell you right out, Hoyt Nitram, Matthews Traverse, PSC Mach 33. Yes. Those are my top three. I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, I shot those three bows really good. And just something about them agreed with me. And those would be my three that I would pick as my favorites.
And out of those three, all newer, obviously, how much rewinding to, we'll say 20 years ago, how much better do you think you shoot, if at all, compared to, I'll pick an old one, a Hoyt Striker 2.
Yeah.
That was when back in the day when the risers were, the limbs were longer than the riser type of thing, right? And the cams and everything was totally different. Even the bow presses back then, you could have your little apple and then pass parallel, you're snapping risers in half with the same bow press. A lot's changed. How much better of a shot are you compared to back in the Striker 2 or even the MQ1 days?
I'm going to go older than that, Aaron, because I am looking across the room right now at my 1993 Browning Ballistic Mirage.
That was back in the Ulmer days when Ulmer was shooting Browning, was that Ballistic Mirage?
I was the best archer of my life when I shot that thing.
That's awesome.
I don't shoot anywhere near as good now as I do. Of course, then I was 22, 23 years old, but I'm sure that helped. But that's what, people talk about the bows today, and they're like, the things that get me are when they talk about noise and vibration. And I'm like, oh, dude, you don't have no idea. I'm like, these things, this thing, I pick it up, it'll jump out of my hand, but I killed tons of stuff with it. It didn't matter. So, yes, I would say for me, I was, what I attribute that to is, though, I shot a ton of field archery then. And I think that's what made me a really good archer. I was really good when I shot a lot of field. When I stopped shooting field, my skill level started going down. That seems to be what I track. But yeah, I shot great with that.
So with like the Browning, the Ballistic Mirage, I'm trying to think, there was XI Velocity, I think, was around that same time.
XI, Oregon, there was High Country was big.
Yeah, the Machine Supreme. Burley Hall, I think, was the spokesman for High Country back then. And then Ulmer was shooting Browning, and then obviously Chuck was shooting, I guess at that time it was Caribou, or it was the Hoyt, but was it what the hell was the other? Was it Caribou, or what was the other Hoyt line that they made basically for Chuck?
Yeah, I remember. There was a whole bunch of like XT. They had a bunch of numbers, 3500 XT and stuff like that. There was
back in the day, and I'm sure some people are going to love this podcast and be laughing. So when you were poor, right, you shot Game Getter 2s where you glued on the knock, right? And then
I'm looking at them too.
Or Autumn Oranges. And then I remember, I'm sure you remember Jack Head, Hoyt rep for years. Remember Jack Head? This is probably, 99 time frame. The Beeman Camo Hunter arrow. I remember him flinging these arrows into the floor to show they couldn't be broken, right? Because when you have a rep, your local reps multiple different, your Hoyt rep's going to have Hoyt and arrows, and then whatever else he's working, whatever, he's got lots of different companies, right? Too. And so those were the days like that were, as a young impressionable like archery range rat, right? You just hung out at the range all day and were a pain in the ass for everyone. But like that was like really exciting to me back then. You saw the new stuff, the rep would come, you'd shoot all the bows, and that has changed dynamically. a ton as well, because the rep still may come, but you've already seen everything on the internet before the rep gets there generally. And
exactly.
So you remember those arrows as I'm talking about this, because when you and I started, like a Game Getter 2, Autumn Orange, and then if you were living high on the hog, you had the XX78s, the Chuck Adams arrows with the, the camo pattern on that was kind of Predator-esque or ASAP looking.
Yeah, right.
And then they had the unibushings, and then they had super swedges, and I'm only going off of I remember shooting 5-inch Marco vanes using the Joe Jan Fletcher. How much things have changed since then, right?
Yeah.
Because
feathers. I always shot feathers. That was what I shot.
Well, as I'm rambling on here, this podcast with you, I need to shut up. Like the sights. Talk about how much the sights have changed from like the fine line with the blades going across, and then the two nuts, one on either side with the pins, all that.
This Browning Ballistic Mirage has old Check-It on it with the T-pins where you had to shoot, and these were the pre-T-pins before you could spin the little fiber at the end. This was when you had to get your left-right to line up so perfectly that you were looking straight through that T at the end, so you wasn't, vertical on you. Yeah. Of course, then somebody said, "Hey, why don't we just make it so you could spin that little piece of plastic?" But and it's giant. It's a huge sight. And now, I have the new XL driver, which probably weighs 1/10 of what this thing weighs. And super easy to adjust. Second and third axis, there's no adjustment for that on this site. It's night and day to where the advancements in those types of things, accessories, have gone. And you mentioned about the arrows too. If you think about, like you were saying, everybody shot those arrows you mentioned. That was it. There wasn't 50 different offerings. Everybody I know who's our age, they shot Game Getters at some point. They just did.
Well, it was Game Getters, Muzzies, and Thunderheads.
Thunderhead 100.
Yep, and you, one way or another, you shot those starting, whether you
for sure
stayed. And and I don't want anybody taking this out of context, because I'm not complaining about technology. I'm just laughing at what we had to deal with back then. And PJ, how old are you? I think we're about the same age.
57. I'll be 58 in a month.
So yeah, you got me by what, 8 years, right? So you definitely, as you talked, like the XI velocity. I remember as we're going through all of this, the Golden Key Premier, which was the two little metal launcher deals with the spring inside, or you could put like a lizard tongue. There was no dropaways in the beginning, right?
No.
The brace, there was no string stoppers. There was a lot of like certain technology that has helped, right? The string stopper and the dropaways, all this stuff. But as a lot of this stuff has kind of shaken out, and the drop away in the beginning, I can't remember. Black Gold had a magnetic inertia drop away thing, and I can't remember what. I think it was Black Gold had one, and then Dan Evans with Trophy Taker. I think that's when it really kicked off with the dropaways. Is that your memory as well with Trophy Taker?
Well, what was the one with the arm that was attached to the cable? It was like a whole arm thing, and
I forgot about the RoboCop dropaway.
Wasn't that a Muzzy?
Yeah, no, I always called it the RoboCop because it was so gaudy. Yeah, it was the Muzzy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yes. That thing.
I forgot about that.
That's one of the first drop-away types that I remember. There could have been more before that, but that's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, what a monstrosity that thing was. And, Tim Gillingham's probably one of the few who still uses it, but we all shot overdraws too.
Yeah.
25, 26-inch arrows, shortened up, because we had massive 8-9-inch brace heights, and we had room for that. So
talk about the overdraw on the short arrows. That's another thing. And I'm like, there's all of these different hubs of information where you have what's the guy's name? He actually bass fishes more. He talks a lot of shit. Ranch Fairy with the heavy, and the whatchamacallit theory. Good Lord, I can't remember. Shooting trad, the dude that went to Africa, and
the Ashby
report, and the heavy arrow thing, and then back then, I just shot like 23-15s and a 28 grain aluminum RPS insert and screwed in a thunderhead, and it was a miracle we killed anything.
And blew through everything. I hear it now. I'll never forget when I was at ATA one year and I heard an honest to God argument between two guys who were talking about which climbing stick was better because one was 16 ounces and one was 19 ounces. I was like, dude, you got to carry a 35-pound Baker climber on your back. And then we'll talk about weight.
Dude, I forgot about the Baker climber. So it's funny because me being from, out west, I didn't start whitetail hunting, and it was up in Wisconsin, Chequamegon, Minnesota, 2002-3 time frame somewhere. Anyway, I had a Baker that was given to me, and then I bought a Summit Viper, I think, and it was a big one, but it was lighter. But up there was lone wolf country, right, and where I was at, and so then all my buddies had lone wolf sit-and climbs, and you were like high on the hog. That was the thing. So I got one of those, and I, with like everything we're talking about up there, almost every one of those guys, when I got up there, were using an HHA pendulum. And HHA still makes a great sight, but that was a one-pin pendulum sight because they didn't shoot very far. But Spot Hog was really getting going back then, I think, right in that same 2002. And look where that's gone on.
The Hogget.
Yeah, the Hogget.
The Hogget. Everybody had a Hogget back then.
Yeah, and still, I mean, the most durable sight. I wouldn't even say arguably, definitely the most durable sight. But, then, like, this is all in the time the drop boys, everything's coming out. They had the angled pins where they worked on a pendulum and then the wire going down. But as far as there was no sights that had fibers that wrapped around your housing. There was none of that. And I remember, especially the guys that probably shot deer a little bit after legal shooting light would have those giant string splitter peeps and then paint tritium paint on their pin the size of a Bic. I mean, not a Bic, a pencil. And they would paint glow in the dark tritium paint. And then you could use the freaking peep as a sex toy. Some of those peeps were the size of like a quarter. Well, not a quarter, a dime. And then the rubber band peeps. That was another really big one. Everybody had an umbilical cord on their peep.
Yep. There was one on this one. I'm breaking it out because I'm going to try and shoot a deer with it this year. But it was dry rotted. First time I drew it back, it snapped into pieces. It's seen better days. But my first experience, I got one of the first lighted pins, and the design now is so dumb I can't even believe that it existed. You turned it on, and there was like a tube that came out and then pointed back at you. And when you turn the light on, it shined this light directly back at you. And I remember turning it first time on, it was super dark. I was like, I can't see past the pin. Well, yeah, no kidding, because it's shining a light towards you. Dumb.
That's well, and I obviously going down memory lane probably too much here, but as time went on, around that same time was the Bushnell Pro 500 rangefinder. That was a game changer, like that for out west hunting specifically. And then Matthews was getting hot and heavy. I can't remember what the Feather, whatever their first one was, but the MQ1 was like the single solo cam, like that was like the big changes were happening then. And but you were reporting, like you were working for a newspaper, but you were bow hunting when Matthews came out with the solo cam. What did you think about that at the time? Like, was that something that, as a bow hunter not working for Lancaster, was that something you're like, I gotta have it, or were you like, whatever?
I would say at that time I had a Hoyt. The name is escaping me. It was a short little thing. I remember going into Lancaster and shooting the first solo cam that I experienced, and I remember thinking, man, this thing draws way nicer than anything I've ever drawn before. But I didn't have to have it. I stuck with my Hoyt.
I'm trying to think what Hoyt you had. Tenacity. I'm trying to think. There was a power. What it would have been back then. Deviator. It's funny. I was still shooting my ballistic Mirage up to like 2000, and I came into Lancaster Archery, and Rob was like, "You got to get rid of that thing, man. I promise you, there are technological advances to that." I was like, yeah, but I like this thing, and I kill everything I shoot with it. Nah, he's like, you got to change. So whatever this Hoyt was, I can't remember the name of it. There was a Viper around that same time.
That sounds right. It's in my basement. I can see it. I can't think of the name of it. It was short, though. I remember it was way shorter.
But this is when the speed thing was getting a little out of hand, too. But like 330 was a barn burner. Right, like that was and that Viper was one that was the speed bow from Hoyt, and I think PSC had Carrera. Does that ring a bell? Do you remember?
I remember that name.
PSC had a Carrera. I think that was their speed bow, and then they came out with a Durango, which was pretty much an exact copy of a MQ1, and I think that was probably 2001 time frame was when this happened.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Hoyt had a Striker. Then they had the Redline cam was their solo cam or their one cam, because before that, command cams. Do you remember? Drawn back. I had a Hoyt Deviator at 90 pounds with command cams. Like, dumbest thing I've ever done. Yeah, the riser, you could see it bending because back then, everything was built. Everything was a little bit, built differently. But as I'm going through all this, when you, with like you said, you went in Lancaster. What did Rob sell you? What'd you get when you got rid of the old Browning?
It was that Hoyt, whatever it was, the name of which I can't remember. That's what I upgraded to at that time. And, you're talking about the arrow speeds. I mean, think about that, Aaron. That through the 90s, think about like Levi Morgan is the GOAT of unknown distance archery. We all did that in the 90s. Yeah. If you were bow hunting, you were unknown distance. It was, you got pretty good at it. And pin gap shooting, you were gap shooting. There was no movable sights. So your 20, your 30, you knew how to aim 25, 26 yards.
Yeah, stacking pins. Because I remember if you had a 5-pin and then you wanted to shoot 80, you'd be like, all right, well, my 60's here, my 40's here. Okay,
100%.
It makes you a better, in my opinion, makes you a way better archer coming up like that. But also tournament-wise, and people don't realize this, there was no known pro. It was unknown, and a speed limit of 2. Unknown. ASA was 280 plus or minus 3 feet per second, or 3%. But there was no rangefinders. There was no known pro class or anything. And back then, to get a bow to shoot 280, and this is, I would shoot 22 or 23 12s with remember those hot points, like a 50 or 70 grain hot point. Yeah. FOC was probably 4% or something. I don't know.
4%.
But that's what you had to do to get speed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember when the Browning came out, it was the speed bow. You could get to 230 feet per second, and we were like, wow, over 200, that's fast.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as I talk about this, the past parallel limbs, that was a big game changer, certainly a game changer for all, pro shops, because you all had to buy brand new bow presses.
Yes.
When that had happened, and then I'm trying to remember, but that was a fairly dynamic, or I say dynamic, but that was a fairly quick switch. Once one bow company did it, pretty much within 3 years,
everybody did it. Yeah. Well, there was I remember the bow that I always wanted to like, but I just didn't, was that the Golden Eagle that Ted Nugent had with the recurve limbs, and the compound was in the riser. I forget what the heck that name was.
Oneida.
He called it was Oneida. That was it. Screaming Eagle. Yeah, the Oneida Screaming Eagle. I don't know why, but I just thought that one was cool. But then whenever I shot it, I sucked with it.
It did sound like a 50 cal Desert Eagle going off as well. And Darton was another one that was a loud bow. I shot Dartons off and on. And Darton makes a great bow now, but back then a Darton, people talk about hand shock. You want to talk about a report? Like, you knew that bow was, and I like a little bit of hand shock. I like a report. But like back then, if you shot those bows now in an archery range, I would be willing to bet a lot of people think you fired your bow if they didn't know what you were shooting. They were that loud.
The Oneida had these big rubber stoppers that the string would slam into the limb when you shot it, and it was just like this real whack. I still thought it was cool. I don't know why. Might have been because Nugent was shooting it. I don't know.
We're talking about that. So back then, when I say back then, we're talking late 90s, early 2000 time frame. So who were the people for knowledge back then for you? Probably the same thing for me, but who were the people that you looked at for knowledge in magazines, obviously, because that's all there was out there?
Chuck Adams was the king, man. I mean, he was my hero in every sense. You saw that smiling face. Speaking of which, I just saw him kill some huge elk in Montana. He's still doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he is, but I thought he was old back then. But he must be ancient now. But, certainly Chuck Adams, he was top of the list. Randy Ulmer was a big deal. I always followed Jeff Hopkins just because, from the tournament side, he was kind of the 3D king. That was in his prime heyday. But for information in magazines, I'm going to say if Chuck Adams wrote something, I was reading it. Or Randy.
Yeah, and so back that, rewinding this far long ago, they had the Cabela's tournament trail back then, and that didn't last a long time, but that's when I started shooting tournaments, was back then. And I was in Colorado in the Springs, and I had Bill Pellegrino, and I never knew Derek that well, Phillips, but Derek was there, Bill Pellegrino, Tipton Cook, Tony Clem. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with some of these guys. Obviously, that was kind of the hub back then.
Yep.
And Tony and I, all of these guys and I are, well, not Derek, but everybody else, were good friends. And I had met Bill, who he hated me because I was a shit-talking kid, as he should have. We get along great now. Met Bill, but really the person who taught me to shoot back then was Tony Clem, and Tony was a very good field archer and thought 3Ds were stupid, which he probably ended up regretting that later. But he and Randy at that time were very good. I mean, there was others, but good field archers. But that's also the time 3D kicked off, and a lot of field archers thought it was dumb. That's my perspective. What was it like in PA? Because PA is huge for, field archery. So
first, Tony Clem, he and his son Tanner, they still come to the ASAs. I see them all the time. They're still out there shooting 3D. But back then, it was precipitous. Field archery was huge in this area. And it was like, well, we're shooting foam animals. Hey, that's just like hunting. That's pretty cool. it was kind of on the club level. 3Ds took over. At the club I belonged to, we just switched. We quit shooting field and we started shooting 3D. Just because it was shooting foam deer. It was like, hey, this is just like hunting. So it was kind of quick, and it's actually very sad now that field archery is almost non-existent around here, because I just think that if you can play that game, man, that's the fastest way to become a good archer. You just have to be, or you're going to suck.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I agree 100%, even though I would probably go get a colonoscopy before I would shoot, 2-day field shoot again. But, cause it's a lot of arrows, but it's a lot of arrows. The first time I shot a field tournament, I think I won, and I was shooting a Hoyt PowerTech like an idiot at like 82 pounds. It was horrible. And I didn't know what I was doing, right? And I had a Toxonic, remember the Toxonic, weighed about 17 pounds.
In my basement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never going to break.
I have one.
And you could defend your life with it, because it is heavy.
Yeah.
But talk about field archery. Like, talk about why it makes you better. And Gillingham's going to listen to this and be like, I know, because he loves. Why is field archery? Why does it make you better?
So I shot the bowhunter class. So I was limited. The rules were different then. I was only limited to 4 pins. And we didn't shoot to 80 yards back then. We shot in bowhunter. We shot to 60. So, I mean, you can do the math. I had 4 pins.
Yep.
So I was doing a lot of gap shooting. I was doing a lot of, as you said, stack, putting my bottom pin I know was 50 yards, and I'd look up, where's my 40 pin? Move my 50 up there and shoot. But you got good at it. And which meant that your form was on, because you had to hold so steady to keep them in those NFA dots. And you're shooting from, the little peeps at like, I think it was like 6 or 7 yards to 60 with 4 pins in my class. Open, you had the sliders and things like that. But it just taught you to really have things dialed in, or you were going to be all over that target. And you could be effective at any distance. It taught you how to gap shoot. It was known distance, but you had to learn those skills, and just about being a technically proficient archer.
And I'm going to add to that, because most 3D shoots now, I say that at club shoots it's a little bit different, but you have off-camber footing, distances bouncing back and forth all the time, the 80-yard fan. I haven't shot field in a long time, so people that are actually field shooters are going to be like,
me neither,
dumbass. But there was a 80-yard walk up, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you had, you learned what I would consider, you learned to be an archer. And the sport, and when I say that, meaning, okay, as I'm looking at the target, and let's say the blue face, looking at it, and I'm seeing all the arrows coming out the right. Okay, I'm looking at the footing. How is the hillside? Like, you had to be a very technical, proficient archer in field. And the longevity of it, you're flinging so many different arrows. But I think that's why you become a better archer. And a tough field course will eat a 3D archer alive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, like you said, you had to learn to deal with elevation changes, shooting uphill, downhill, side hill, all that stuff, uneven footing. Just, you had to be able to get things right to be able to execute good shots. Like I said, I think that's when I was at my best. Of course, I was a lot younger too, but
and a lot more arrows. And that's
tons of arrows.
And because consistency is a big one. When I say that, meaning you're shooting one arrow at a 3D target. Obviously there's some places you'll shoot 2 anyway, but in general, you're shooting 20 targets in the morning, 20 in the afternoon, or 20 Saturday, 20 Sunday. So you're shooting 20 arrows a day, maybe 40. Yeah. Where with field archery, it's a pile. I'm trying to think how many arrows.
It was the round that we did was 28 targets, 4 arrows per target. Yeah. That's what we shot. So that's
that's
whatever
28.
But that was one round.
96, 100 and something arrows. Yeah. In one round. And again, you had to have the concentration, to win anyway. You could not have ADD. You can have a fairly high level of ADD with 3D archery and be okay. Every shot you have to, 4 arrows per target. So it would grind on you, but it has faded away. In Europe, it seems to still be maybe a little more popular, I guess. But and I could be totally wrong. But 3D took over everything. Yeah,
it did. And all of that to say that the only reason I shot field, indoor, any of that was to be a better bow hunter. And man, if I drew back my bow during those days, whatever I was aiming at, man, the odds were good that thing was going to die.
At a solid probably 225 to 40 feet per second.
Yes, exactly. Right. and it might be 26 yards, 33 yards. Didn't matter. I could account for that.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about that, that we brought up the arrow thing, but then I can't remember the arrow charts, but I would say, everybody had their, but when I shot higher poundage, 2317 was that was Chuck Adams' arrow, I believe, was a 2317. That's all he shot was.
Yep.
But those arrows were 11 to 13 grains an inch. And you didn't have, when you were tuning, there wasn't the option of a carbon arrow where you could shoot a micro. You were just shooting heavy shit. There was no way around it. And when again, I'm trying to think, when did it go from 3 to 4 to 5 inch veins? Right around that 2000 time frame is when the smaller veins kind of started taking over as well, didn't they?
Yeah, it was around then. Yes, I'm going to say, because it was about when I gave up the Browning. I also gave up the Game Getters, and I think I still have them. It was some kind of gold tip arrows that I had back then. I remember it had this horrible finish on it that if you shot into a 3D in winter, you were not getting that arrow out.
I have a gold tip knock scar in my quad from exactly what you're talking about, with 2 guys reefing on it and went into my leg.
Jeez. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then that's when I know those arrows I still have at home, they have Blazer 2-inch.
Yeah.
So
Duravane got big right in that same time frame, and and there was others as well. And then remember those short, and I think this was because of Ulmer. I think it was at Catalina State Park. I remember Ulmer took normal knocks and cut them down to pick up a little speed, and then they had those goofy green ultra knocks that would break if you farted on them. You remember those short little guys? I don't know how many dry fires those caused.
I remember one where the what do you call it? The center of the knock where the string sits was just barely off the arrow. It was almost touching the arrow because it was so short.
Yeah, that's probably those ultra knocks. They were green, and it was a 3D thing because you picked up a couple, feet per second. But back then you had to juice whatever you could. But the one thing is, going down glory days, is I remember, and I stress to people now, is you're never going to beat the speed of sound. And I know that obviously if you can't judge as well a faster bow, I get all that, but being as how everyone pretty much has a rangefinder, the noise of the bow back then was far more important because you weren't going to outspeed anything, right?
We had cat whiskers, big beaver balls. You put all kinds of stuff on that thing to try and quiet it down.
Yeah. Oh, it was wild. Well, and we've hit an hour here. I should probably ask, what's your schedule like before I talk your leg off?
I'm good.
Okay.
As long as we need to go.
Releases. Yes, let's talk about releases, because back in the day, you had a brass knock in this little rubber doohickey, and you'd snap your arrow on, and then the rubber doohickey would go below your arrow, and then you would have, I'm trying to think, a Scott Mongoose or a Fletcher had the string that went around. You remember that release called the Answer, where if you punched it, it'd jerk you through your peep sight forward? You remember that?
Yes. I remember the Answer. I remember the name. I don't remember what it did.
There was a little...
But I remember that release.
Mechanism, you'd have to squeeze it really slow, and if you punched it, the mechanism inside would straighten up. But I bet it caused more rotator cuff surgeries than anything, because when you punched it, automatically guys would fold up like a cheap suit. And I remember guys, their index finger to their middle finger having scars from that going into their cable slide as it compressed them together. But that was the other thing. And then there was no D-loops back then. That's about the time D-loops started getting... popular.
Well, and not only was there no D-loops, but they used to use monofilament for serving. And once you broke that thing, it just...
It looked like a bird's nest as a kid fishing.
Yeah, you were done. And it was the rubber button was the eliminator button. It was that little rubber button
eliminate shit. I can tell you that, because knock pinch, like people talk now about D, and back then, if you put, now if you have your D loop tied correctly, you can just put a knock on your string and draw back, and it'll stay relatively parallel. Back then, that eliminator, your knock pointed straight to your feet. Like there was no, and you didn't have a drop away. You had a spring, like a spring inside your Golden Premier. Then I remember Tony Clem, he was showing, like he shot a Carter Colby, I think, just a hook. And he's the reason why I shoot a hinge now. He would shoot a 2-finger, but back when Tony was shooting field, there was no housings. And so you didn't circle your peep on your housing. You centered your pin in your peep. Talk about a dynamic change in accuracy in life, because now what you teach compared to back in the day, they'd center their pin in their peep.
That was it. You made it work. A guy like Tony, he was hitting what he was aiming at. It just, you figured out how to do it. It was, I shot the Scott caliper release. I don't remember which model it was, forever. And in competition, indoors, field, whatever, that's what I had, until I got some local guy made me a hinge that had a rope around it. This was before the hook, so it had a rope on it, and that's how I got into the hinge. But I shot that Scott caliper in competitions for years.
Well, in the hinge game back then, there was Zenith. First it was Stanislavski. That was it, right? You had option A and A. It was Stan, and
that's right.
And Stan, what you're talking about, you had a huge rope you could rappel off of. Remember how big those were?
Yes.
Wrapped around
it added like 3 inches to your draw length.
And you'd wrap that or big dongle around, your string, and then Zenith came out. I think, and I could be I'm sure there's people in the know more than me, but I think Zenith got popular about the same, time, and then Carter came out with that hook, and the hook hooked to the, same kind of system, but there was not 2 mechanisms or a cam. It was just a hook that dumped off your D loop or your rappel rope that was hooked around. I'm having flashbacks about all this right now, starting to twitch.
Me too.
Because tuning was a nightmare back then, and if you God forbid had to shift your cam over, you had 74 donuts. Spacers that would fall all over the floor, And if you lost one, you were screwed.
People don't know the pain, the precision that you had pulling that axle, because you're like, as soon as I do this, I know those things are going to go flying everywhere. Yeah. And how many were on the left versus on the right? I can't remember.
Oh, it was
17 here and 13 over there. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, and it just like I said, with the string pinch and the tuning, and it was funny because, you know, technology. I'm trying to think. And I'd like to get the pioneers of technology back then. I would say Spot Hog, not bows, but equipment. Spot Hog was probably, you know, up there. Carter, you know, with the releases. Jerry Carter, a super good dude. Do you remember that video, I think, Shooting with the Pros that Jerry made, where he was? Yeah,
for sure.
I watched that literally until it wore out on DVD, and it was every pro archer talking about how they shot whatever they shot. And you know, this back then, people are like, you know, probably not. There was no internet back then. Like, there was no watching anything. Like this DVD, you got to watch Cousins and Clem and Hopkins. And like back then, Hopkins, I obviously, for a big boy, he must be flexible, because how he gets his fists, the way he does, the way he anchors, is genetically impossible for me. But Hopkins was the guy at that time. Like, he was winning everything. Yeah. When I say that in the unknown pro class. Yeah. And Jackie Caudill, who's still, you know, getting after it today. Who was the Alabama dude that did Buckmasters? Connor. What was his name?
Alan Connor.
Alan Connor. But like at this time that you and I are talking about, what people probably don't realize is it was unknown yardage. Like, there was no range with all these tuning crises. It was crazy.
Right. Yes. How we ever hit anything, and yet I sit there and I think it wasn't just like, oh, you know, I hit one every now and then. No, man, we were good. Yeah. You could, I mean, like I said, if I drew back on a deer, it was dead. And that just, I don't know. We made it work.
I was just going to say, you just make work what you've got. And at that, you know, as all this was happening, the Matthews was getting big. You know, I think that was the same time Trophy Taker, that early 2000s drop-aways, that kind of took over the market. Everybody was shooting a Trophy Taker. And then the releases started getting better and better. And I would say Carter probably was at the top of the game at that time and Scott with their index finger. Releases. But one of the other things that was probably that people was overlooked is strings. I know for a fact that a Matthews string could stretch up to an inch and a half in the life of that string. Remember how much, like, you could shoot a field tournament and literally have to give 5 yards from a solo cam, string stretching, shooting out the bottom by the end of the day. I mean, from my memory, am I remembering correctly? Because I think I had one stretch an inch and a quarter, inch and a half.
I did not have that bow, but I remember shooting with people who did, talking about exactly that.
Oh, like adding yards throughout the day. Like, am I peep creeping or what's going on? But string technology is huge. And now you have, I would say gas is probably at the top. Is Eric Griggs and that. I would say gas is probably, you know, but back then you didn't have all of these options. And I'm trying to think what they were building their strings out of. It's been so long. What the hell they were using? Fast Flight or something?
Pretty
maybe
durable. Because I think it was Fast Flight. I was going to say the same stuff they were making recurve strings out of, which is still Fast Flight. And that string that's on my Browning. I mean, that thing's got to be 30 years old and it's still held together. I just shot it the other week.
So what?
But,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you come to like you were talking about your string stretching on your Matthews too. The other thing was the back walls on these bows were so spongy that, who knows where your anchor was when you were anchoring, but you figured it out. Like when I draw it now, I'm like, man, I don't know where I anchored, but I obviously knew then. If you were consistent, you obviously figured it out. But there wasn't that definite stop like we have now, where it's okay, that's where the back wall is.
Yeah, well,
figure that out.
I'm figuring. I'm as I'm going through my PTSD of archery here. The other thing was let off. There was no 65% was it. Like that's what you had. And like right now, and I still shoot lower let off compared to most, but I would say if you had a 65% let off 70 pound bow in a pro shop today, I think it would be like kissing your sister. I don't think anybody, there would be something wrong with the bow because they just weren't used to it.
Yeah, exactly. I think this Browning is 55, if I remember. And I draw it back. I'm like, wow, how did I ever hold this back?
It's like holding back a recurve.
Yeah.
So, getting away from memory lane here in the trials and tribulations of archery, with the competition archery media, which is where, for anybody listening in, there's a ton of informational stuff. But if you want to go, watch golf, basically go watch 3D archery, you guys made it exciting. And when I say that, like, when I don't shoot tournaments anymore, friends with a lot of the professional archers. I did go to the ASA in Alabama and about died of a heat stroke, but it's fun to watch. I remember that. Right. And so, I was just praying I didn't finish last, because I went from not shooting a tournament in 20 some years to going into known pro. And I think you came and talked to me. I shot with, what's the little Denmark kid?
Stefan
Hansen. He had no idea. He doesn't hunt. He has no idea who I am, obviously. And he hits 18 12s in a row. And I'm like, holy cow, right? And I don't have the vision that I need to. And because I remember thinking, just don't take last. And so, which I thank God I didn't. He was in my group or whatever, and he shot 18 12s, and he didn't end up winning. 18 12s in a row. And it was about 140 degrees, it seemed like, and 100% humidity.
Yes. Correct.
I'm trying to quantify this. I don't know that from Hopkins' days, let's say, right? Hopkins had the record, and then Levi beat that. Levi is a very competitive, individual. He just hates losing, and
just a little bit.
Yeah, and so, but I don't know what would happen nowadays if you rewound, right? Like, what would some of these archers? How would it affect them if? One, obviously took away the known pro, but other than that, I mean, like, truly the technology, would scores change, or would people adapt like we're talking about? Because it wasn't like back then people were shooting bad. I mean, there was amazing scores in unknown. I mean, Hopkins would shoot up constantly on unknown. It's amazing, I guess. I mean, you just get used to it.
Yeah, I think you make it work. I always like to see that, you think about the Vegas shoot. People were shooting 900s back then, but not like now where there's, 32 guys shoot 900s. You could, back then, you could be the only guy who shot a 900 and you win it off that. You're seeing some improvements based off that, but with the unknown game, I mean, that's a whole skill of its own. People talk about, what if Levi had to shoot known? And I always think of what Mike Tyrell says. Hey, this guy hits 12s when he doesn't know the number. What do you think he's going to do when you tell him what the number is?
Yeah. Well, I'm rewinding in my brain the first time I shot with, back when I was trying to pretending I was going to be a professional archer. We had went down to Catalina State Park. This was one of the Cabela's, and Bill Pellegrino asked me to, or whatever, he let me shoot with him. And it was Hopkins and Bill and Dave Connor and someone else, right? And I'm young, this is 99 probably. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I was in awe, right? Like shooting with these guys. And I remember there was a black bear at 44 yards or whatever it was. And I shot first, I think. And I shot just out the bottom of the 12 and was like extremely excited, right? That I hadn't looked like a fool. And then the 3 or 4 other guys all wadded arrows in the 12. And I was like, yeah, I shot it for 44. And I remember Hopkins was like, yeah, it's 43 and a half. And I'm like, yeah, I'm outclassed here. This may be more than I am. And, it was just amazing what they could do. Yeah. And they could judge. Yeah. Like, he wasn't lying. They could judge like that. And Levi certainly can. So
that's one of the things that I love about Cam is going out there and just watching those guys do what they do. Because I'm standing there, right there. I can see the target they're shooting. And, and then I'll ask them questions. I'm like, man, okay, I'm sitting there thinking it's 40-ish. And Levi's like, yeah, it's 42 and a half. I'm like, I don't have that precision in me. And those guys just do.
Yeah, Levi's.
And ladies too, Sharon Wallace, Cara Kelly, equally. They're just good at it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I've hung out with Levi and Justin Hanna. He came down, they did, and we went on an Oudad hunt. And Levi's just an all around amazing, human. Same with Justin. But obviously, like with I don't want to say technology, right? Or like, you hand anything to Levi, he's going to win, right? He'll, like we talked about, he's going to find a way, figure out a way. The one thing though, that like when you're, Levi's done it for so long that I got to imagine he's getting tired of it. Like, no matter how much you like to win, age catches up with you, and it's not as important. Maybe it is with him, but not as important as it once was. And I'm not saying Levi told me this. I get tired of hunting. Like, when I say that, people are like, you'll never get tired of, believe me, you can get tired of sleeping on the ground. I promise you, it does get old. The level of dedication and drive that Levi has to have, amongst many others, and you're there, you're seeing it.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because this year, so Levi had won 13 shooter of the years. He had his 12 in a row, and then he did not win one. Then he won 13, and then it was 5 years. Dan McCarthy won them all. So this year, Levi was in a fight, and it was coming down to the last day at Coleman. I was right there videoing his last shot, and he shot. And I've watched Levi shoot for years now, and I told him afterwards, I was like, dude, that may have been one of the worst shots I've ever seen you take. And he told me, he was like, that is one of the most nervous I've ever been. Because he said, he'd been asking himself, do I still got it? Can I still, win shooter of the year at this level? And so for me, it was cool, because it's like, yeah, he has won everything, but I can see it does still mean that much to him. Or at least that he's like, man, I don't want to lose. I think he had lost the IBO Triple Crown the week before. I think he had lost it on one of the last arrows. And he said that was in his head. He was like, I don't want to do it again. I think he only needed an 8 to win, but still, I could see in his shot, that was not him taking a normal shot. Something else was going on. And that's when he said, yeah, I was nervous. Well, you figure, how can you be nervous?
Yeah, and when you are looking and watching, and actually tell everybody where to go so they can go watch everything that we're talking about on YouTube. What's the page called? Is there an Instagram page? I forgot about that. But
Competition Archery Media is our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And on our Facebook page, you can see that video of Levi's last shot to win Shooter of the Year. That one I filmed to put on there. Just to see and hear him talk about it. I just thought that was cool, you know.
Yeah, and I it's like, obviously in anyone's mind watching, obviously he's still got it, because it's not like he's losing badly. He's just not winning every one, meaning, you know, he was, in the 5 years, I think he was second for 4 of them, wasn't he?
I believe every one. And in those 5 years, I watched him lose it at least twice on the last day of the last tournament. He was in the lead. I think it was last year, in fact. He had the lead coming in, and then he lost it. And I think he did that twice in those 5 years. And I'm sure, especially to a guy like him, he didn't forget that. I'm sure that stuck in his craw.
It was fun hunting with him and Justin. They came down. It's on the border of Mexico or whatever for the Aoudad, and Justin shot a big one, and Levi did, you know, as well. And like you were talking about the bows, we couldn't have the bow in the video because it was a new, you know, it was coming, but it was an amazing. It's fun hanging out and hunting with Levi in general. He's just such a good dude. Same with Justin Hanna. But
yeah,
whenever going all across the board here with your season, with what you do, when does that kick off with with Competition Archery Media?
So like this coming year, it's going to start. We have that new, it's called the Rushmore Rumble. It would be at the ATA show, which is first week of January. So that tournament's incorporated into it. So this year, that'll be our first event. As soon as we come back from that, a week and a half later is the Lancaster Archery Classic. And then within 3 weeks, we have our first ASA of the year. So beginning of January is when that starts. And then it goes until the last ASA in August.
Gotcha. And, you know, with that, during that time, you're interviewing, I think you have a shot of the day type of a video, if I'm not, that's all.
Yeah.
And, you basically ask whoever how they assess that target. Is that, I've seen some of them. I think
shot of the week. That's the bane of my existence because I've been like 5 years. It's like I can talk on camera, but that is now in my head. That has been so long since I shot a 12 that's all I think about when I'm standing there full draw is like, dude, you haven't hit this thing in now like 3-4 years. You're not going to hit it now. It's not good karma in my head right there. But it's fun. It's fun for me just to listen to somebody like Levi or Dan McCarthy or even Sharon Wallace talk about how they do what they do, because they think of things I never would have thought to think of that. But that's why they're way better at it than me.
So who would you say, on the tournament trail, who would you say is pick 3 of them, the best teacher? Like, who is a great resource that is, basically very methodical in their thinking and well-spoken? Who would be the 3 out there that you would send people to?
I would say, for me, talking to them is Levi, Dan, and Chris Perkins. Dan McCarthy, that is. Dan doesn't do much on social media, but man, he breaks things down, and I wish he did more because he puts a lot of thought into everything he does. And then, of course, Levi, just a fountain of information, what he does in his shooting process. And then Chris Perkins is like my archery guru. I've been out on a range, and I will text him, "Hey, Chris, man, I'm getting these weird left and rights, man, just random, totally." And he'll text back. He'll be like, "Pull your rest cord tighter." I'm like, "No, the timing's good on it." He's like, "I'm telling you, pull it tighter." I pulled it tighter. Boom! All of a sudden, all my shots were in line. Like, what the? I gave him no information. So those three guys, I would say, are really, Tim, you can never go wrong. I think with Tim, though, there's a lot of stuff that he talks about that works for him that maybe not be applicable to the masses. But he is obviously very knowledgeable, especially if it comes to arrows and arrow tuning. But those would be my three main guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's fun. Actually, Tim just came to Colorado and shot in a tournament that we host every year. My buddy Luke and I call the Best of the Best. It's like a mountain course, and it's kind of redneck. So obviously, having like not every target had a center 12, or it was one of those, like, I'm like, well, if it's got a low center 12s, we're counting center 12s, but if a target doesn't have a center 12, count the low one. And I thought Tim was going to go into anaphylactic shock. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, like, this is what we got. But we got into it was funny because Tim and I argue all the time, and it's not a mean-spirited thing, but we do yell. We do yell, right? And so we're at Tony's house, Clem, and I've been friends with Tony forever, and I come down from Wyoming, and we're there, and Tim, when Tim got there, I showed up, Tim's in there, and Tim and I immediately start arguing and yelling, and I mean yelling, and and so Tony's wife, who's a sweetheart, is worried I'm going to beat the shit out of Tim. And Tony's like, no, Aaron's not going to hurt Tim. And, but it was that, and it was about sight leveling. And I'm like, look, Tim,
oh no, not
everyone in the world has your resources. So when I'm guiding and someone shows up and I don't have the ability on some sites to put a ham ski low. Well, they need to buy a new sight. I'm like, okay, Tim, this is what I mean. This is a world that you live in. And so I'll throw a 4-foot level on limb pocket to limb pocket and hope for the best and try to send them out the door with some excitement where they feel good. And Tim lost his mind. And I'm like, look, Tim, I guide all over, and you do the best you can with what you have, and we don't live in a perfect world. And oh, good Lord, back and forth. And I hate misinformation. And I'm like, and again, he has a wealth of knowledge. And as I say this, I consider Tim as a friend. But Tim also has a 34-inch draw length, and there's a lot of things that go into that. As much as the crazy heavyweight wackos are, it's almost like Democrat and Republican. You have the crazy lightweight arrow crowd, right, where you have like both sides of the fence. And actually, your opinion on that, how much has that been taken when we talk about crazy FOC, your FOC? How much do you think that's blown out of proportion?
So I remember I have a couple thoughts on that. First is when I was filming a segment for a TV show, and one of the questions that came in is, what is your FOC? And my instant reaction was, I have no idea. I don't know. I've never measured it. It never mattered to me. But when you break it down, an arrow that I'm going to shoot is naturally going to have sufficient FOC. It's not going to be high. It's not going to be low. I'm going to have a 29-inch arrow, 300 spine, total arrow weight of 452 grains. I'm going to be right around 12, 13, 14%. That's just the way it is. But, I don't care what it is because I don't shoot super light arrows. I don't want super heavy arrows. My arrows weigh 452 grains. That I'm going to kill whatever I'm shooting at. That's just my bottom line. I don't pay attention to that. I'm more interested in accuracy can I hit what I'm aiming at? That's more important to me in arrows. And I think people get caught up in that FOC game thinking that it's going to do something for them. And I don't know that it will. If you can't shoot, period, you can't shoot a high FOC arrow. You can't shoot a low FOC arrow. You're just not going to help. But interestingly, I was with Levi at a tournament when I was filming this thing, and I asked him, and he said, I don't know what my FOC is. Same thing. Just to me, there's 18 things that are more important to worry about than that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm not everybody. When you have these conversations, people take it to the far extreme, and I will say I don't hunt elk or moose. I don't hunt any of those big game where it may have an impact. I don't hunt those, so I should qualify that. Yeah, I do though, and so I can feel confident in saying, I've shot a lot of elk, and
for sure.
I think that there is, like everything in life, a happy medium where I think you can have too light of an arrow. I think you can have too heavy of an arrow, and I think that you can have benefits to adding some point weight. I shoot 175 up front.
Sure.
I don't pay attention to my FOC or whatever. I like to have a 125 grain point and about 50 grains of components in there, give or take. I shoot a 300 spine, and I can make that work for pretty much anything. And I've shot just about everything with that, setup. Could I kill with a 590 to 600 grain arrow? Yep. Could I kill with a 390 grain arrow? Of course. But happy medium would be easier to tune, or easier because of speed. It's also going to be, my bow is going to be relatively quiet, again, the happy medium. But I think when people send a spreadsheet to me that has and I'm sure you get this, 450, 455, 462, 484, and they show me these and say, what's the best arrow? And I'm like, what's on sale? Yeah. What do you have more of, and what do you feel good about? Shoot that one, because it's really.
What do you not care if it sticks in a tree?
And I shoot heavier poundage ish. I shoot more than I really need to, but I don't know. With you shoot something in the scapula, it's probably not going through unless you hit the thinner portion of. I aim into the scap a little bit. I'm pretty tight in the pocket, but in reality, accuracy is far more important than many, many other things.
That's what I don't, obviously I've hit the shoulder. I don't want to. So I want something where I believe I probably won't hit the shoulder if I'm aiming off of it. Mm-hmm. That's preference.
Well, and I think that it gives people to talk about, and you have the different, people plant their flag in the ranch ferry thing, where they're like heavier stuff or whatever, and nothing wrong with any of it. It's just, if you go hunt out west, and like you said, you don't hunt elk and moose, but if you're taking advice from a dude that shoots pigs and deer under a feeder and hasn't hunted sheep or goat or high country mule deer, again, happy medium, you gotta, you don't, like, if your entire setup is for you to suck and hit something in the shoulder, it's kind of a flawed theory to begin with. Right. You don't really want to set your entire setup up to suck, because you suck. Right. Like, just work on not sucking. And that probably sounds horrible, but that's
Chris Perkins killed his mountain goat at 120 something yards. Okay, that arrow obviously had enough to do the job and was set up where, he's world level skill, but, are you going to do that with a 600 grain arrow, 120 some yards? Oh, probably. Boy, you better have, you could probably shoot that thing and look at your stopwatch before it gets there.
Well, and that's kind of the same thing, and we'll get off here in a minute. I'm talking too much, but like when people are like, hey, I can only get 98 yards out of my sight. Should I shoot a lighter arrow? And I'm like, well, man, it's going to take a real drop in arrow weight for it to make much of a difference. Maybe work on, getting closer, right? And I don't, nothing, I've shot animals far away, but I'm saying like guys will be like, well, what's the easiest way to get yardage? I'm like, well, it's your peep height, right? So your peep height, whatever it is. Like I have a low peep height. And so, well, what if I raise my peep height up and change my anchor? And I'm like, you're giving up accuracy probably to add yardage. Like that is a flawed, I think that's a flawed thinking. It's like, no, just work on accuracy and, don't shoot shit at 120 yards. I mean, nothing wrong. But get closer, right?
Maybe 90 yards is your max. You just kind of have to accept that. That's my max.
Yeah. Well, I guess
I want to be as close as possible.
I've taken some far shots, but the majority of mine have definitely been, closer up. The thing is that to take a far shot with high certainty requires you to be a master of the sport, of the game. You take a Chris Perkins. He's not just a good shooter. He's also good at tuning. He's also, there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. And so the weight, how his bow is set up as far as his stabilizer system and everything, there's a lot to it. So it's a lot more than just winging an arrow out there. And, people, I think that, the internet, like we talked about, is good and bad about that. Because, even me, I show videos of me shooting, testing vanes and wind at 120 yards. But it is a long way, right? There's a lot can go wrong.
Yeah.
So,
for sure, 100%. You can't control what the animal does.
No. But, man, we're at an hour and 40 minutes, and I've about talked your leg off. But I really appreciate it.
It was fun.
I've wanted to get you on the podcast for a while. It was funny. I saw your deer and I'm like, I should get a hold of PJ and see if he's got time for a podcast. And I got to go guide a bunch of elk hunters tomorrow. So it worked out great as far as that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. This was good talk. Good. Now I'm going to have to go, as you said, get all that ancient archery PTSD out of me. Thinking about all those old bows and all the issues and stuff.
Heck yeah. Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you, Lancaster Archery, Competition Archery Media, where all that's located at?
Yep. All the usual channels, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Lancaster Archery Supply, Competition Archery Media. We're on all those. Me personally, I'm PJ Reilly. You can find me on just Instagram and Facebook for that. I don't do the YouTube. I do enough for the company. So, and I mean, this is fall. I'm like everybody else. I just love hunting and I love archery.
Heck yeah. Well, dude, you do a lot for the sport, as well as Lancaster. So I obviously appreciate all of that. And anybody, there's a ton of different places to buy gear, but Lancaster has pretty much everything you could possibly imagine. So definitely check it out. And you guys employ a ton of people, which is also great. So, man.
Great company.
Thanks again, dude, for everything. And stay in touch. Let me know how the season goes.
Appreciate you, Aaron. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Take it easy.